exact year apart from each other?
Yeah, April 2nd. Kind of crazy. But yeah, no, I got nothing to say about that. Yeah, it's April 2nd.
How would you kind of summarize your season?
Yeah, I think despite a lot of adversity that we went through as a team and a lot of different things. Obviously a lot of losses and different circumstances that we weren't expecting. And we handled it well. We learned, we grew, and I think going forward, definitely helps us. From this moment, I think that I'm a big believer in you really only can appreciate those moments of glory or when you do well or something when you've been through tough times. And so I kind of think that's the approach we're going to take as a team and individually. I think that I did a good job of not letting last year affect how I was going to play this year. And I was really proud of my energy on the court and how I played. So I was happy with myself.
Do you think that kind of the work that you put in off season, coming into a year where you did have more success individually, is going to dictate the kind of summer you have this year?
I think I'm going to have the same summer I had last year, just because I think that summer gave me such a good jump start into my third year. Golly, my third year. That's crazy. And so it'll be very similar to that, just because I know that helps me and it helps me to get that intensity and that work on my body like that, and I'm excited about it.
When you were coming into year 2, you said you felt bigger and more athletic, and it felt like that actually really showed up in year 3, maybe more than we saw in year 2. Are there things you think that you were working on this year that may not show up until next season?
I think that you could correlate to that, or you can correlate it just getting more mature in the league. I think that every year is going to be some improvement, and I think that it's all the years combined as a culmination. I don't think that specifically one year leads to the next year, and it's been, it started from when I was a kid. It's always about been improving, and I'll continue to keep that mentality.
Speaking of your third year, now that means going into your fourth year, you would be extension eligible. I know you probably are not thinking contract stuff necessarily, but like, what are you thinking about kind of your future with the Jazz and potentially extending that?
Yeah. I love Utah. I love the fans. I love the coaching staff. I love the people around here. I love the mountains. And I think that this can be a home for me. And so I'm excited to go into negotiations and figure something out. But I love Utah, and I would be very thankful and very blessed to stay here.
Where do you think, I guess, has it been hard to stay patient with this rebuild just in general?
Yeah, there's definitely frustrating times, just like with anything in life. But, I think that coach and all the players and everyone around, all of us have done a really good job of understanding that just because it's frustrating or hard, whatever, doesn't mean that there's not a reward at the end of it. And so understanding that, we're going to have an opportunity to rebuild and make a team that's a great team and for the future, and all these young guys working together and growing together, it's going to be huge.
Would you prefer to have an extension signed before becoming an unrestricted free agent, or a restricted free agent a year from now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that there's definitely, two ways to look at that depending on the player. For me personally, I haven't really thought about it much, just because I've just tried to get through this year. After this year and getting into the summer, then we'll reassess on what that looks like. But like I said before, I love Utah, and I would love to have a home here.
How much will you be paying attention on draft lottery night?
A lot, yeah, no, a lot. Excited for that, and we'll see what happens.
At the beginning of this year, when we started to see how much more improved this season was going to be for you compared to last season, you talked about in the summer working on being more positive and being more grateful. Is that helped? Has that changed your mindset on? We talked about how patient or impatient you are on the rebuild. Has that helped or changed your mindset?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's helped drastically. I think that you can always take two approaches to a situation. You can look at it and be like, "This is terrible. This is this sucks. Whatever." Or you can be like, "Look, what an unbelievable opportunity. I'm in the NBA. I'm grateful for that. I have great people around me. I'm thankful for that." And it's definitely helped me. It's helped me on the court, helped me off the court. And it's definitely helped my patience as well.
Is Will a good coach?
Was a great coach. I was fortunate enough I've been with him since his first year as a head coach. So we've kind of grown together in that way a little bit. But I think, I could talk about the X and O's. Obviously, y'all know that. He's very intelligent. But more just about the person. Coach is someone that cares about each individual player and actually gives effort to make sure you're okay off the court, on the court, checking in. Like, he has an open door policy. You come in his office whenever you want. And obviously I haven't been on another team before, but I've heard, stories about other teams that's not necessarily like that on every team. So Coach is great. I'm extremely thankful for him, and the staff that he's put around him are fantastic, and they're phenomenal.
Do you think that he holds you guys accountable?
No question. No question. He does, but not only will he hold us accountable, he'll hold himself accountable as well. He is not afraid to say, hey, that was my bad or that was my fault. And I'm sure y'all have seen in the media, after games, stuff like that. He's not so high and mighty or ego that he's not going to admit when he messes up. And as a player, seeing someone that can take responsibility for, messing up, it kind of makes us a player, well, I don't have an excuse. I got to hold myself accountable as well. And so it challenges us to be better.
He also, I don't think in 3 years he's ever, quote unquote, thrown any players under the bus.
No, I've never.
How nice is that to, have a coach that kind of.
Yeah, he has all our backs. Like I said before, he cares about each individual person, and that includes, having our back in the media, and he does a great job of that. He's not going to be afraid to say, hey, you need to do this better, whatever, and he's not going to throw us on the bus either and say, this is all his fault, yada, yada, yada. So, it's very refreshing as a player to play for somebody like that.
Along those lines, I think Keontae mentioned this to us the other day, that during film sessions, he'll call out Lowry just as quickly as he'll call out Isaiah.
Whoever's on the film that messes up, yeah, no question. He does not care. He does not care who you are, how many years you've been in. He will say, hey, you need to do this instead, try to do this better, yada, yada. You're tripping. You need to try to, run back, whatever. No, it does not matter who you are.
In what ways do you want next year Walker Kessler to be better than this year, or different than this year Walker Kessler?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I could speak to, obviously, free throws. I could speak to catch and shoot threes. I can speak to a lot of things, but more so than that, I think just improving on, or continue to improve on how I play and the intensity I play with and the effort I play with, and being relentless on the glass, being relentless on the defensive side, being able to cover guys in a half-court scenario, being up higher in ball screens and just fly around. So it's just going to continue to improve my game in totality, honestly. And a lot of that's maturing, and a lot of that's, spending hours in the gym and weight room, and a lot of that's just visual. It's just going to be continuing to learn.
Will has talked about wanting you to be more vocal.
Mm-hmm.
But there are scenarios where you come back next year as the longest tenured player on this roster.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you feel comfortable doing in the locker room, like being the leader of the team or one of the leaders?
No question. I think that we have a lot of leaders on the team, and I think that we all hold each other accountable really well. And I think that I know that I'm not afraid to speak up. And I can promise you, the way I talk on the defensive side or the way I talk in the locker room, everyone can hear each other and take not criticism, but coaching from anyone, and I'll be the first one to say, hey, I need to do this better. And I'll say that in film session, and, other guys will do that as well. And so, I definitely think that I continue to work on that, but I'm not afraid of it.
All right.
All good?
You all.
Thank you all.